everyone and welcome to this week's weekly reading wrap up. I read 4 books this week, which I am again really chuffed about. That seems to be what I'm averaging at right now. And 3 of those books were books that you guys had requested in a previous video. If you want to request one book for me to read, I will leave the video linked in the cards and also the description down below, so you can go and check that out and request one book for me to read, because I am slowly working through all these requests and I'm having a great time doing so. So the first book I finished last week was The Beautiful Ones, which is by Prince, kind of. It's also by Dan Piepenbring, and basically Prince is meant to work on a biography with this Dan guy, and he died before it was completed, which is a terrible shame. Luke had actually requested that I read this book, so of course I had to read it. I'd actually bought him a physical copy back when it came out, but I listened to the audiobook for this. Highly recommend doing so. It's quite a short listen. It's only about 3 hours long, so you can fly through it. The main problem with this book I found was that because he died before it was completed, it felt very incomplete, and so it could never get 5 stars from me. I'm not someone who is overly interested in Prince. I like a few of his songs at most. Yeah, he's not really someone I was ever really interested in, but at the same time, I think there's a lot that can be learned from reading different people's biographies and autobiographies, and that you don't necessarily need to have any sort of appreciation for the person to actually A, learn something, and B, have a good time. So I gave this book 4 stars. As I said, it just felt a little bit incomplete. I mean, the first half of the book pretty much is the introduction, and I thought that that was really interesting, actually. It taught me a lot of stuff that I didn't really know about Prince, and stuff that I probably haven't even retained, actually, but it was kind of good to know about at the time while reading. I was like, oh yeah, cool, yeah. I learned a lot, and that was possibly my favourite part of the book, actually. You get to learn how this biography even sort of came about, if you will. And then the last part of the book, the other kind of half, is what material they'd actually got so far for the book as Prince from his source. So quite a young age, up to, I can't remember what age we reached actually, but it didn't cover an awful lot, which, as I said, is a real shame. And yeah, obviously there's nothing that can be done about this, and we should just be appreciative of the content we did get. And I'd still say this is highly worth picking up. As I said, I bought Luke the physical copy back when it came out. He loves his copy, and I highly recommend the audiobook too. It's great to listen to, so either way you're onto a winner if you decide to pick this one up. The next book I finished last week was a review book, and this was A Little London Scandal by Miranda Emmerson. I received a free copy of this book from the publishers via NetGalley, and I've already done a full spoiler-free review for this book, despite the fact that it doesn't come out until towards the end of August. I got a little bit carried away. I'm not usually quite so on it with my review copies, but because I'm getting so much reading done right now, I'm kind of feeling quite on it and just picked one up sooner than I should have done. But I had a great time in doing so, and I can't wait to see other people start to pick this up as time goes on and the publication date becomes closer, and then obviously the release date as well, because this was a fantastic read. I won't go into this one too much here, as I said, I have got a full spoiler-free review, so I'll leave that linked in the cards and also description down below in case you want to check that out. But I gave this 4 stars, and it is a mystery thriller, more mystery crime, set in London in the 1960s. The next book is one that was requested by Clara Byrne, hope I'm saying that correctly, and she wanted me to read Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is a book that I'd kind of been umming and ahhing whether to pick up, because I didn't think it was something that was going to be for me. So I wouldn't potentially have picked this up without this request, so thank you so much. She wanted me to read it to kind of work out whether she was alone in thinking that it's a bit overhyped and that she doesn't really see the appeal. So I was like, I'm up for this. I picked it up on audiobook. I grabbed a copy from Audible, and I flew through this book, and as I said, I didn't think it was necessarily going to be for me. I didn't even really know how to rate this book when I'd finished it. I felt a little bit unsure, because I was left feeling confused on how I even felt about it. So you follow these two characters from quite a young age, sort of, I'm not even sure what age, but they start off kind of knowing each other in school, and they have this on-off relationship for a lot of their life, basically. It's easily the most frustrating book I've read in a long time. It's also kind of addictive. So I gave this 4 stars. So I'm unable to debunk the whole this book is overhyped, because I'm not really sure. I gave it 4 stars. Like I said, I quite enjoyed it. I see where you're coming from in the sense of I don't know why this gets quite as much love as it does, but I suppose other people don't get quite as annoyed as me, and that's why they get the 5 stars, because they want to be with each other, then they don't. They want to be with each other, they don't communicate, they don't communicate, they don't blooming communicate. It drove me insane, and that was definitely my major issue with this book. I don't get how it got to the popularity that it did to end up with a TV show. But then with it being set in Ireland and covering the topics about sex that it does, while being Irish, maybe that has a lot to do with it, because Ireland being a very Catholic country, sex before marriage, I'm assuming in a lot of parts of Ireland, is still frowned upon today. And so, yeah, I did actually speak to Aoife over at Fred Weasley Died Laughing about this book. Can't think whether it was before I read it. I think it was before I read it. She was on about the TV show and how people have been complaining in Ireland. And I was like, I'm really surprised that this was even like shown in Ireland. And she said that it's very much the younger generation that are kind of more modern with their opinions and thoughts these days, and it's the older generation that's still very much still Catholic ideas and no sex before marriage, etc, etc. So that's the impression that I've been given. I don't live in Ireland, I've never been to Ireland. I'd quite like to go to Dublin one day, you never know. So yeah, that is all I can put it down to, potentially the fact that it is so groundbreaking for Ireland, perhaps. As I said though, I had a great time with it, and I probably wouldn't have picked this up on my own, so thank you for suggesting that one all the same. The final book I read last week was another viewer suggestion. Sandy B wanted me to read Simon Says by William Poe. This isn't a book I'd even heard of, was not on my radar in any way, shape or form. Again, I had quite a mixed experience with this book. She did warn me beforehand that this book has triggers for various different types of abuse, which, not a problem. However, I didn't realise just how raw this was going to be to read. It was hard going, to say the least. Not to say that I didn't enjoy it, although I'm not sure enjoy is even potentially the correct word in this case. It was a phenomenal read, yet also an impossible read. It took me a good few days to get through because it was just too hardcore to just sit and just read. It was bonkers in that sense. Okay, editing me has just realised that I didn't actually mention that the main character for this book is gay. And while I don't feel like that's something that I necessarily need to be going around shouting about, because it shouldn't matter, the fact is pointing this sort of thing out does matter, so that people know that they can be represented in a book. And also it is a heavy part of the plot, him dealing with that, but also his family dealing with that, and also the relationships that he gets himself into, along with all the other things that happen in this book. So yeah, I wanted to quickly just jump in and mention that the main character is gay. He has several relationships within the book, some of them healthy, some of them definitely not healthy, and a bit of a mix in between. So I thought I should quickly jump in and mention that. So this book follows a guy named Simon, and he'd been kind of indoctrinated into this cult and spent quite a few years of his life there. And when he left and broke free, he moved back in with his parents and they're starting to get on a little bit, and the father dies very early on in the novel, and this bit was all really gripping for me to read. It was truly heartbreaking, and the flashbacks to his childhood that was contained within that as well was really interesting. So I liked that. That was probably the first 20% of the book, and I really enjoyed that. Then he goes on some sort of drug binging to try and get over everything that has happened to him so far in his life. I didn't find the beginnings of this bit, at least, overly easy to follow, both in terms of subject matter and in terms of just, it got a little bit waffly. I feel like this section here was far too long-winded before it properly got kind of going again. And I considered DNFing it. I think I potentially would have DNF'd it if this hadn't been like a kind of subscriber pick. So I carried on, but I did start kind of trying to speed read this book because I just didn't want to take in every single word. So I started speed reading it, and I actually read the rest of it via speed reading, but I took a lot of it in. Like, I was quite surprised. I don't enjoy trying to read quickly. It's something that I've experimented with a few times. I'll leave a video linked in the cards and also the description down below where I look into subvocalization. And yeah, I tried to not subvocalize while reading this book. And I actually put some music on in the background to help me not do that. And the music somehow managed to make the book cut even deeper into me. It was quite a bizarre experience. It was really hardcore, and I nearly cried several points later on in this book. Once I basically got through this bit is too much, too waffly, too description over nothingness, and got back into a bit more plot again, I was hooked, truly hooked. This was just such a raw read. I mean, the things this guy goes through. I don't even know where to begin with the trigger warnings for this book because it's just a lot. There's, as I said, there is abuse. There's some child abuse in here as well. There's physical abuse, drug abuse, rape. There's a lot. And the descriptions along with the plot. Oh yeah, there's suicide, or rather attempted suicide. Suicidal thoughts. I'm waffling a bit here, a bit like how the book does. Basically, this is an incredibly difficult read, and I wouldn't recommend it for everyone by a long shot because I'm one of those people that are like, hey, I don't have any trigger issues, not a problem. And I found this difficult to read, like incredibly difficult to read. And when I had finished it, I felt really kind of down and miserable and was like, oh, and just sad about life, quite frankly. So yeah, don't go into this one looking for an easy read, but if you want something really unknown, if you want something that is heart-wrenching, generally heartbreaking in every way, give this a go because it's quite nice to read a hidden gem. And as I said, I did overall enjoy, if that's the right word, this, and I gave it 4 stars. I personally picked it up on Kindle Unlimited because I was just finishing off my trial on there, and that's another reason why I needed to speed through it. I was like, I need to finish this book before my Kindle Unlimited runs out because that was going to run out Saturday night, and I was reading this Saturday daytime. So I was like, okay. I think I started it like Thursday or something. I read a bit Thursday, I read a bit Friday, and then Saturday I was like, right, I can't drag this out anymore. I need to just crack on. So yeah, it was definitely a different one, and definitely one that I wouldn't have picked up without the suggestion. So thank you so much for that as well. And that just really emphasises why I want to be able to read people's kind of recommended books, one from each of you, because I'm just discovering so much that I otherwise wouldn't have picked up. Like all 3 of the books that were recommended to me in this video, I wouldn't have read otherwise. I wasn't interested in reading about Prince. I wasn't interested in picking up normal people, and I hadn't even heard of Simon Says. So that is a win for me. I can't wait to see what books I'm going to pick up in the up and coming weeks. I'm sort of just working through in what feels to me a logical order. So if I haven't yet read something that you have requested, don't worry, I will be doing. Let me know who you have read recently, whether you've read any of these, whether you plan to pick any of these up. I would love to know. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe by clicking the image of me if you want to see more book reviews and other bookish content from me, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.